pride, passion, and pageantry of college football lives here. This is the Paul Finebaum Show, Hour 3 podcast.
This might be college football heaven.
We are back. It's been a busy show. A lot of conversation about college basketball, which we just had. Big games tonight, but mostly the CFP conversation, which emanated from the New Orleans meeting today between the Big Ten and the SEC. It was the second time the conferences came together. This time, not only were athletic directors there, but head football coaches. So we'll get an update from Heather Dinich at the bottom of this hour. Back to the calls. Actually, why don't we go to the Zoom? Okay. You want to go to Colorado and talk to Bash? Bash, go right ahead.
What's up, Bash Brother Paul? Randy! What's up? Paul, I gotta say, when I was on break, when you went to break earlier, I got to see a little behind the scenes of the show when you brought Drew Zimmerman on the scene. Was that Randy dressed in all black that was getting Drew mic'd up before he went on air?
No. That wasn't you, Randy, was it? Randy, can you barely just kind of poke your head over here so we can confirm who you are? Just in case.
I thought that's not allowed.
No, that was who was that? This is Randy.
Yeah,
Randy!
Randy!
Randy's a tall guy, isn't he?
You gotta dip down so the camera gets to the top of your head.
How about we have exposed Randy to the world? I wonder.
I've been exposed.
You've been exposed. He feels violated, Paul. You've done him wrong.
I think that was Ken who was there here a minute ago.
Ah, okay, right. Anonymous Ken. Have never heard of him before until now.
You won't hear from him again either.
Yeah, well, that's all good, Paul. But man, it's been a great show today. I agreed with you, Paul, when you said earlier, when you talked about the 16-team expansion in the college football playoffs, it's literally Darwinism, Paul. It is survival of the fittest. And Chris came on the show, and it was even more embarrassing than yesterday, Paul. This dude tried to say he's the second best team in the SEC. What the hell is he smoking? I would love to know. That sounds like a hell of a drug to me. But on the top of that, Paul, he's not even the big brother in his own state anymore. He's lost to South Carolina. What are we even talking about here? Oh, my goodness. Some of these callers, Paul. But I will say today's been a better day when it's come to listening to these callers, especially from the ACC. Because, I mean, if I was them, Paul, wouldn't you be pissed that you're about to be excluded more from the playoffs? Because let's face it, you didn't do anything to make your conference more. Chris just wants to get on here and say, oh, the Clemson Tigers, we've owned this conference. We've made the playoffs. We've won national championships. Great job. No one else has. And that's the problem and why your conference is going to be left in the dust. And the only reason we're bringing the Big Ten into this, Paul, is because Batman needs a Joker. We need a villain. Everyone in the SEC hates people in the North and vice versa. So that's why when it came to every conference in the country, you went with the easiest choice, the one that's the most hated. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it was smart because the Big Ten is a significant conference. They have all the TV deals. And if the SEC was going to get a drafting partner, who else is there? I mean, the Big 12 just doesn't really matter that much.
No.
The ACC could be better, but it really isn't.
It could be better, exactly. It's like you said with how the tides have turned with basketball now at the SEC. And Paul, one more thing before I let you go. The stupidest caller I have ever heard in my life watching the show called in yesterday and compared the flip of college football to the Big Ten to the flip of college basketball to the SEC. Paul, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my life. How can you compare a sport being flipped from one conference to the other and you have 5 teams, maybe 6, give or take, in your conference that are relevant in the top 25? Paul, how many top 25 teams in the SEC alone, let alone are going to make the NCAA tournament this year? That is the stupidest comparison I have ever heard, and that is why, as I mentioned earlier, Paul, It is so easy to hate these morons. They literally call into the show, and only the calm Jeff from Ohio, not the dumb Jeff that likes to come in and make the stupidest slap a tariff on him, Paul. What the hell, Jeff? Shut up. That's the only Jeff that has some decency to him, the one that zooms in. So I always appreciate it, Paul, when you let me give my 2 cents on the show.
Well done, Bash. Always great. Thank you, Bash. Let's check in with Tanner, who is in Tuscaloosa. Hello, Tanner.
Hey, Mr. Paul. Your old buddy St. Louis John, he ain't called in yet, has he?
Well, he hasn't come out of his coffin yet.
All right. Well, I think he knows what's coming his way tonight. You know, I've listened. He hadn't been talking about Missouri basketball here much lately.
No,
he's been talking about hockey and. Well, Paul, you know, I'm a fan of America, and I loved watching USA put a whooping on hockey. And the only next best thing is tonight, Nate Oates and the boys are going to roll up to Missouri, and we're going to roll Tide on that ass. And I think old St. Louis John knows it. All right? I've heard him disrespect Coach Pope in Kentucky, and that's a program I respect, Paul. That's a program, you know, he plays a similar style of ball to Nate Oates, and that's something I can respect. Somebody said something about Missouri speed earlier. That might be John's drug of choice, but it's nothing we're concerned about. You know, I'm a little concerned by all this, you know, disrespect we got. You know, I'll give Auburn its props. Give the devil its due. They beat us. They bested us. But, hey, it ain't March yet. We got a long way to go. We got time to improve. We've licked our wounds. We've regrouped. And tonight we're coming to Missouri. All right? And before he gets on here spouting off nonsense, I wake up each morning, I brew a pot of coffee, and I drink it. 2 hours later, the sun comes up. So don't come at me, man. I like my coffee blacker than Legends hat. All right?
Ooh,
you just
I like
need
that.
to get – we got – hey – Right across the room from Jim, right down here at Bryce Mental Hospital. We got a room waiting for you whenever he wants to come on down here. But roll Tide, Paul. Tonight, I think we're gonna get our groove back. Tide by 100. Roll Tide, Paul.
Well, Tanner is a really good caller, by the way. That guy has come alive. Peacock is up next. Hey, Peacock.
Hey, Paul, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
We are doing well, thank you.
Hey, man, hearing all these Zoom callers, I just got to imagine what they look like. It's like when I met Sean Sullivan down here in Mobile. I hadn't seen him forever and walked in the studio at work, and I was like, so here's a guy I've been listening to for like 3 years. So it was cool. He's a good-looking guy. But, hey, I want to talk
Sean's
about
a very respected talk show host down in Mobile.
Oh, super guy, great guy.
He is.
Hey, I want to talk about the Super Bowl. You know, people calling in saying, you know, when they panned to Taylor Swift that, you know, the crowd booed. Well, yeah, they booed, but it wasn't. They wasn't booing politics or Taylor Swift. It's the Eagles fans. There's more Eagle fans there than anybody. And
what bothered me
trash.
that she grew up an Eagles fan. That's how stupid the fans were.
Exactly. And hey, Paul, I knew you'd agree with this.
I mean, she's dating
Eagles
a guy
fans,
who's the star. Well, was the star of the Chiefs. I mean, listen, I don't want to feel sorry for somebody who's the most successful person in the world, but I did think that was classless. But again, the Eagles fans, I mean, the story is pretty well known by now. About 30 years ago or 40 years ago, they booed Santa Claus.
Paul, look, win or lose the Super Bowl, you know what they're going to do? They're going to riot and burn down their own city.
Yeah.
Complete trash. I mean, it's trash. So, you know, I just want to get that straight for people. Taylor Swift wasn't booed like crazy.
Yeah, and if from now on, Taylor just ought to X out Philadelphia from her next tour. She'll show them.
Right. Well, Paul, hey, I ain't called
We'll
a
go to
while,
Pittsburgh
man.
instead of
I'm
Philly.
a loyal listener and good hearing from you.
Hey, thank you very much, Peacock. Great to hear from you. We continue here with more phone calls. And what about Greg in Tennessee? Hey, Greg.
Hey, Paul. How you doing, brother?
We are doing great.
Good to hear it. Of course, the weather's been crazy. We're at 25 degrees in Middle Tennessee, so.
No, yeah. By the way, I mean, I don't know where.
week.
I don't think it's warm anywhere, but this is like the second or third polar vortex or whatever it's called, and I've about had enough. I mean, when
You and
Randy
me
and I
both.
walked in earlier, it would look like a blizzard outside.
You know, crazy thing about Tennessee weather, just stick around. It changes
Oh, yeah.
often. Next week it's going to be 60s and 50s. So
Yeah. Well, I'm just ready for April.
You and me both, brother. Hey, the meeting the SEC had, I'm not real sure why they're sneaking around about things. There's a lot of fans out there that need to be informed. A lot of money changes hands at all these games. Having 9 games would be great. I think that's a good idea. But one thing that I've heard, I've been broadcasting in Tennessee, been doing it a long time. What I'm hearing from a good source, and I haven't heard anything talked about it on your show or any other show on ESPN. I haven't seen them all, but the ones I've watched, I haven't heard. But what they're also going to do with the SEC, I'm not sure about anybody else, but fans need to be ready to put out more money because they are going to have some of the games, probably every school will experience this, will be on streaming, online. Could be anybody that has a major streaming network, and you'll have to pay more money to go there to watch your team. I mean, we pay enough money now as it is with cable companies having all the channels you need to have to watch sports. A lot of money changes hands there too, but they don't care about the fans. They're just trying to make more money the best way they can. You know, you mentioned Auburn and Alabama had 3 million viewers. There you go. They have a big game. You'll have to go pay streaming costs, and there you go. There's millions of dollars being made on that one game. I don't like it, but my source, it's coming. It might not come this fall. It might be 26 before it comes, but they're in the works of getting that straightened out right now, is what I'm hearing.
Well, Greg, thank you. We'll go down to New Orleans and find out what happened there in just a few minutes. Heather Dinich joining us. More of your phone calls when we join you in just a moment.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we are back and glad to have you. We'll talk to Heather in a minute from New Orleans. Right now, I-Man joins us.
Hey there, Paul. How's it going?
We're doing great.
Thank
How are
you for taking my call.
You bet.
Good. I just got back from treatment number 5 of 6. So I got one more treatment with the chemo in 3 weeks from today.
That's fantastic.
And I'm hoping that this one didn't hit me like the last one because I just got my taste buds back and food is halfway tasting decent. And but I heard Bash, and then they'll start a new regimen. You know, they'll scan and test and that kind of thing, and then we're probably going to some kind of shots at that point.
Okay.
No radiation. But I heard Bash talking about giving his 2 cents. In this day and time with the economy like it is, Bash, that's 28 cents now. So you need to up that. You need to up that ante. And what does it cost to mail a letter now? Damn near $1.
Yeah.
But anyway,
a letter is cheaper than eggs.
Yeah, it absolutely. You know, Paul, I saw a video on X the other day, and this guy was actually going into one of these commercial hen houses, you know, the long chicken houses.
Yeah.
And he was stealing eggs, and I'm thinking, you're going to risk a felony arrest for stealing damn eggs? I mean, I guess it. You know, if you got an egg fetish, that's what you do. But yeah. I was just shocked at that. I had a great conversation with Swamp Dog. I think it was Friday.
Yes.
We must have talked 45 minutes or so. And he's a great guy. And we talked about nothing but music, and we filtered some football in there and some opinions, but he's a great guy. And you never guess who I got a text from and talked to yesterday.
Who's that?
Judge John.
Oh, my goodness.
And I tell you what, he's a really nice guy. And
what did he say?
And he comes across, he comes across like you do, and we talked, and he was telling me things about his life and things, and we talked about the show and talked about me, and I understand his point about having a financial consultant available for these kids. But like you said, and he knows this too, it's up to the kids to take that advice, and some of them are just not going to take it. But, he's just wanting these kids to get the best out of what they can get while they're there and have some education. And we know that that's a good thing, but and I know, if I had all the money that I just threw away, I mean, Paul, I had this old 59 Rambler, 58 Rambler. I had to push buttons, park and that kind of thing on the left side of and it was a clean car. It was a grandmother's car. Nowhere but the drugstore and the doctor's office. It was clean. And it had a flathead motor in it. Nobody'd work on it. But I had one hell of a radio in that thing sitting in the yard. And that's basically all it was a radio with some speakers I put in the back window. And I just sat out there till the battery died. But anyway, Paul, thank you for taking my call. And gentlemen, men, I'm talking straight to you. Get off your butt. Go to your doctors, have an exam, and do this for yourself and do it for your family first, because you do not want to go through this. And prostate cancer is something completely avoidable. Go to your doctors, and if you don't like what you're hearing, get a second opinion and go from there. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, and I hope people will listen. One other thing we're going to talk to Heather Dinich about, and people are saying, what is going to happen to conference championship games? Well, according to a number of reports, the SEC is talking, this is according to Seth Emerson, about reimagining the championship weekend into a series of play-in games. Do you like this? So ultimately, you could have two play-in games matching the 3rd and 6th seed and the 4th and 5th seed. You could also have 4 play-in games, 1 versus 8, 4, 5, 2, 7, and 3, 6. It's on the table, but how much interest is there in that? I'm really curious for some of your reaction. It just seems like, in addition to the now maybe 14 or 16 team playoff, do you want additional games that weekend? And this year there were a few empty seats for the SEC championship game. Are you going to play those games in Atlanta? Are you going to play those games at home? Where are you going to play those games? And yeah, there could be some really compelling games like this year. Let's say we had Alabama against Ole Miss to get into the playoffs, but there's a lot of concern, though, about the toll that it will take on, these are still college kids. I know they're making millions of dollars. Devin is in Mississippi. Hello, Devin.
Hey, Paul. I kind of just wanted to talk to you about Mississippi State's game last night.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane, and I can tell you, just from somebody who goes to State, we were all absolutely we were freaking out that we beat Texas A&M. But I wanted to call because I got to say, that was a great game. Especially big shout out to Josh Hubbard. He was all over the court, and I don't really know how he did that because he's got the biggest balls imaginable. I don't know how he was getting back and forth. But I just wanted to ask, having beat Texas A&M, what do you think about our chances moving forward? Do we look like more of a serious team even after having a lot of those devastating losses?
Yeah, Devin, my snapshot is whatever happened in the past, meaning a month ago, 2 months ago, doesn't matter. Your NCAA hopes rely on how you're playing going in to the tournament. I think that's the most important thing. Thank you for the call, and that was a great game last night. We talked to Coach Jans about it. We'll take a break here. We'll find out the latest from New Orleans. Everybody eager to get an update on what happened today and all week. Heather Dinich joining us next.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
So we continue following the big story. This is from Heather Dinich. Sankey, Tony Petitti agree CFP seeding needs changes. A lot to unpack here. Heather has been covering this story from New Orleans, and she joins us now. Heather, thank you very much. So Let's start with what you took away, your biggest headline from this 3-day conversation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul. Yes, I think that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti coming out and saying that they are in favor of changing the seating for this fall is important for college football fans, because I thought that was one of the more controversial facets of this inaugural 12-team playoff. But it's important for your viewers and listeners to know that in order for that to actually change, it does have to be unanimous, and all 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua would have to agree to that. And they're all going to meet in person next week in Dallas. I'll be there for that, and it's certainly possible that they come to an agreement and unanimously decide to do that. It's also possible they don't, or they push it down the road to their annual April spring meetings. But the way they would want it to look like is mirroring the committee's top 12 while still making room for the 5 highest ranked conference champions. And the point of debate this year was that the top 4 seeds were awarded to the 4 highest ranked conference champions, as you know, and it's quite possible that in the case of Arizona State and Boise State, they were ranked lower than other teams, and that just caused them angst, obviously.
Just staying with next year, or this year for that matter, whenever it starts, where would the biggest opposition be, or who from, to keep the status quo for one more year?
Well, you would assume the opposition would come from the conferences that most benefited from it, which would be the Mountain West Conference, where Boise State earns the number 3 seed as the 3rd highest ranked conference champion, but also in the ACC, where Jim Phillips was fortunate to have SMU also ranked and included in the college football playoff, not with one of those first round buys. But, you know, I think just in general, the conferences that benefited most from it would have the most trouble agreeing to it. But at the same time, the power of persuasion is an amazing thing. And do you want to be the only person at the table in that room who's voting against it? Because, you know, those kinds of things tend to get out in the media. So I don't know the answer to that.
Heather, before we get to some of the most important details, take us through this 3 days, because it surprised a few people that these football coaches showed up. What did you take from that?
Well, I talked to some people, and part of it was that they usually meet in Birmingham, and because they were having these meetings here with the athletic directors for their annual SEC athletic directors meeting, they just decided to bring the coaches out. So they were there on Monday with the athletic directors, and I was told they had a lot of really good conversations. The coaches were very involved and very engaged in these conversations, and part of it was certainly about the possibility of a 9-game conference schedule at some point. And then on Tuesday, the athletic directors met in their regularly scheduled meeting. And then obviously today, the Big Ten joined them for the joint meeting. So, yeah, you know, they just moved the coaches meeting to have this all done at once.
And as far as this 9 games, this has been on the docket for years, and it was almost a guarantee to happen until all of a sudden it wasn't. What did you sense from talking to people down there on the likelihood of that, and what the trade-off is to make that happen?
Well, there's SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey said that there is certainly interest in it, and he realizes that this is a conversation that has been going on for about 3 years now. However, in order to make that decision, they need to know how the selection committee is determining these teams, how much the non-conference schedule weighs into this, strength of schedule overall, how athletic directors should be scheduling, how many teams are in it. So I think figuring out the playoff, how many teams and how they qualify, is of the utmost importance before they say, okay, yes, 9 conference games is the way to go.
Heather, as you know, and I realize you're there reporting, you're not concerned what the opinionists are saying, but there's been a lot of criticism of this new conversation that now this is the second time it's happened between the Big Ten and the SEC. What did you sense from being around there and talking to so many people, maybe not for attribution, but on background, how the Big Ten and the SEC feel about now coming together as almost one.
Well, I asked both commissioners just about the fine line that they balance between a position of leadership at a time when college athletics desperately needs it, not just in terms of the college football playoff, but overall with NCAA government and the House settlement and all of that, and also the public perception of it, separating and pulling away, and power and money and all of those things that are headlines and storylines. And, Sankey's answer was, I feel that we have led responsibly and will continue to do that. And there's also a reality that this is on paper. The power is on paper. And it's something that everyone, being all of the FBS commissioners in Notre Dame, agreed to in terms of the Big Ten and SEC having the bulk of control over the future format of the college football playoff. And Sankey reiterated, everyone agreed to this. And so he said that there is a responsibility to lead, and Petiti said that it's part of the plan to eventually get to a consensus, but they are welcoming other opinions, and they certainly have been collaborative with their other FBS commissioners when it comes to NCAA governance.
I mean, all that's true, but it does look like something out of a mafia movie, does it not?
Well, Petiti and his New York roots there, and Sankey's got some New York roots too. But, listen, they made an offer that they couldn't refuse when it came to the playoff and the way the power was divided a year ago at this time. And we've been reporting ever since that it's trending towards 14 teams. And quite honestly, I think within the FBS commissioner's room, I would say that there seems to be less pushback on this power division than there is publicly. I think that there's a sense, hey, if the SEC and Big Ten want to step up and lead the way, have at it, because there are a lot of things that need some help right now in college athletics. That being said, there's always skepticism when people meet behind closed doors, and sometimes people, as is with the selection committee, don't trust what they can't see. So the more transparent you can be about things, the better, which is why I think Sankey and Petiti, following these meetings today, said, hey, guys, you know what? Before we tell you what we think, we're going to tell our fellow commissioners because we feel that's the right thing to do.
So, Heather, finally, take us to next week, because that seems like a very important meeting. You laid out a lot. What do you think is the number one topic as all of these commissioners and Notre Dame get together?
I think the number one topic is going to be 2025 and how to continue to execute this year's college football playoff, which will be 12 teams, the best way. And do they change the seeding? Can they agree to that? And like I said, I think it's certainly possible, but it's a coin toss. It really is, as to whether or not they can agree to it, and whether or not it happens now or at their April spring meetings is also a question in terms of the timeline. But the reality, Paul, is these guys need to figure out not only the seeding for 2025, which is an easy switch if they can agree to it, but they also need to figure out what 2026 and beyond is going to look like, because that's coming up fast.
One thing we know for sure, Heather, there's always another meeting from these commissioners. So you have your spring laid out for you. Great to talk to you. We'll see you soon. Heather Dinich joining us from New Orleans as these meetings are now over. We'll take a short break. Back after.
You're listening to the Paul Finebaum Show podcast.
And we are back here on a busy Wednesday afternoon, about to be evening, and Vance joins us next.
Hey, Paul. I apologize to the gentleman, I don't remember his name, that was talking about when it comes to pay-per-view or streaming and all that about college football.
Right.
This is a natural progression that I've known, and I'm not alone. This is a natural progression of what's going to happen. And there's always a proverbial the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Right.
Because I believe that they created something that they have no idea how to handle. They didn't have any idea to start with. And when it comes down to that, college football relies on fans and people in the stands. It's not the NFL where they have contracts where you could play in front of nobody, to my understanding. They're going to get their money. But when they do that they're going to call so many people, and that's when they'll find out, we made a mistake. Because so many people that create things, they never understand the ramifications of what they do. Does that make any sense?
It does, yes.
And they've even done it to the bastion of football I love the most, which is high school, to escape all this crap. And now I'm watching Julian Lewis at Cartersville, where they're talking about, well, he's going to get $3 million to go to USC. Now he's going to Colorado, getting $6 million. In other words, they've ruined all that. They're ruining it, and I don't think they know what they're doing. I don't think they know what they're doing at all, and it's going to come back, and it's going to kick their butt. That's just my prediction.
So, Vance, what do you think is going to happen? Is my question.
I think that when they go to charge me money to watch a football game, I'm going to start watching reruns of Gunsmoke.
Well, that won't be hard to find, considering the show is about, 60 years old.
My whole life. I've been watching it my whole life, and then, you got to pay for this. No. And do I think I'm unique and alone? Of course not. Don't you believe people will follow suit?
Yeah, I always worry about stuff like that. I remember in 1994, remember that, Randy, when the baseball went on strike? Everybody said, I'll never watch baseball again. People do. I'm still not convinced.
They didn't have to pay, Paul. They didn't have to pay.
But do you realize, the things that we pay for every day?
Oh, and they're still costing a lot, by the way. I'm just telling you, we've never had to pay to watch our college football, which is a fan's game. It is a fan's experience.
Well, if you've been to a college football game lately, you have had to pay. I have friends of mine who are my age who are going, I'm not paying that anymore, and I'm looking at them going, where have you been? It costs a lot of money to support your team now, and that's your choice.
But, of course, you got to pay for the price of a ticket to go to a football
No, but you're not paying for the price of the ticket anymore, Vance. You're paying a premium on getting the right to be able to buy a ticket.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting in my own home deciding that I'd rather sit here and watch the game.
But Vance, I already know the answer. When's the last time when's the last time you attended a college football game?
1989.
Yeah, so what I don't mean to single you out because I like you a lot, but you're not exactly the fan that matters anymore to these universities.
Well, all I'm going to say is when they start charging you to watch a game, I promise you, people are going to say, I'm out.
I don't know the answer to that, Vance, but I know one thing. If I'm a Georgia fan or an Alabama fan and I find out I'm going to have to pay to watch my team on Saturday, if I can, or even if I can't, I'll probably pay. Just a thought. Don't know for sure. John, what do you think?
I agree with Vance. I'm an old man, too. And, what they're doing is they realize just what y'all were talking about. The experience of the game is getting so high, they're thinking, okay, well, these people are getting their big porches fixed up with the screens outside and having these parties, and we're losing them. So we're just going to hit them where they got to pay one way or the other. They're businessmen, and their job is to make money. That's what we got to realize.
But Johnny, and while your age and Vance's age do go to the games, you don't go as much as you once did because you don't really want to. But a lot of young people who have the means do support these universities. Now, I do think I'm not being Pollyanna here. At some point, I have a lot of friends who just say, you know what, I've been a fan 40, 50 years. I'm not giving them another dime. And what you've talked about and what Vance talked about is the problem. They don't like a player who takes the money and then at the end of the year says, you know what, I've had enough Alabama. I'm going to Ohio State. I'm going to Georgia. I'm going to Southern Cal. That's the disconnect.
As John would say, you just segued into something that I would like to talk about. About a month ago, Ross Dellinger was on your show, and he said that the portal, while there's opportunities, but there's nothing that'll keep a player at the end of the semester, at the end of the whatever, from changing. I look today if your team didn't make the playoff and just say your NIL was for the season, I see nothing stopping these people because of the player talent being spread thin from saying, okay, enroll here. We're about to go into the playoffs, and we need a edge rusher. We need a tackle. We need a center. Do you see that coming?
I do, yeah. I mean, all of this is coming.
That's things that I just don't think people are thinking about things like that. And I'll just tell you, I spent several years in the industry, and when we had problems, we went to this training called root cause analysis. And you don't need guaranteed spots. You don't need all that. What we need is a system where you accurately rank the teams like basketball has. And, look at the SEC right now. Amongst ourselves, we're almost even. Outside the conference, we're stomping the crap out of everybody. And what we got to have, if it can be done in basketball, it can be done in football, and it would stop this guarantee. And if you guarantee it, you're going to take play away, just like paying a player before he ever gets on the field. It's hard to. Human nature is going to take away from your effort if it's just give to you. I mean, that's
Johnny.
Just
Thank you. I hate to run, but we're up against the break. Listen, I understand the frustration. I'm talking about my own friends who aren't going, but there are a lot of people that are still trying to get on the list to go to Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee football games. Meanwhile, we'll talk about the SEC likely to go to 9 games in the final hour and your phone calls.